Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Charlotte from Happy-ology.com, and this is episode 1 of the new Happy-ology podcast. I am super excited and super nervous to be bringing you this podcast today. And you may know me, I typically like to write, so this is a new medium for me, but I've been thinking about it for a while, and it was time to give it a try. So here we go. This is episode 1. This is called The Reality We Can't See. First, before I get into the topic, I wanted to introduce myself. Some of you, maybe many of you, might not be familiar with me and my blog, Happy-ology. And so I am lots of things. I have a lot of interests. So I am actually trained as a veterinarian. For many years, I did typical Western medicine and some emergency medicine. And I did really enjoy that, but I always felt that something was a little bit missing, and during that time, I actually fell into a fairly deep depression. And working through all of that, a few things happened that sort of put me on this path that I'm on now. And the first was I was diagnosed with a genetic form of depression. And basically, I was sitting in the therapist's office, and I was saying, I feel terrible. This is the worst I've ever felt, but I've always, I've never really been happy. I don't know what that is. And he said, well, you've probably got genetic depression and you will never actually feel happy. He said, you will feel like this for the rest of your life, which, I think maybe could have gone badly, but sort of spurred me to say, I'm a bit contrary by nature. So spurred me to say, you're wrong, and I'm going to figure this out. And at that point, it became very clear to me, I'd been through a few therapists and some different medications, and it became very clear to me that that was not the answer. That was not the solution for me. And I had always had an interest in alternative medicine, and that's actually, my dad does a little bit of touch therapy, so I was a little bit familiar, but not really into that world at all. And of course, when you go through your schooling to become, a Western trained doctor, whatever the discipline is, you're really driven into this evidence-based, we know that these drugs do this, and there's no evidence to support alternative medicines. And that's not true, but at the time, that was the line that was given. So, anyhow, I luckily sort of said, you know what, forget all of the science, the medication isn't working. The research-based psychology approach is not working for me. And I went and saw a naturopath, who made a huge difference for me. And I also started learning about Chinese medicine and decided to follow up on an interest that I had in acupuncture. So I obtained my acupuncture certification, and I actually left my regular job at an established veterinary clinic and started my own acupuncture and alternative medicine based clinic. And sort of got myself out of this. I was in a really deep kind of major depressive episode for about 2 years, and I managed to pull myself out, and I was doing okay. I was sort of at baseline, which for me was sort of this, okay, life's all right, but there's nothing really special to it, that, I guess, that sort of thing. So after that, a few things kind of just happened almost by accident, because I was pursuing this alternative medicine. I got invited to, it's actually a funny story. My mother-in-law wanted to go down to this healing retreat, and it was in New Mexico, and we live in Alberta, and there's not a direct flight, so you have to transfer over, usually in like Denver. And so she really wanted to go, but she didn't want to make the plane transfer by herself. She was really nervous about it. And so she invited me to go, and I had just started my clinic. It was not overly busy. And I said, yeah, I've got the time. And, for me, still being on the, particularly sad end of the spectrum, was like, yeah, I think, some sunshine and some heat. It was, I think, February or March, some sunshine, some heat, getting out of this, freezing cold and dark Alberta winter would be really good for me. And I went to the seminar, and I didn't really know what to expect, and it blew my mind. And it was a seminar with Dr. Louise Swartzwalter, and she does kind of a combination. She has a therapy called her brain system, but it's kind of a combination of emotion code and geotran and a few other things. And she did it, and I kind of was, I was definitely intrigued by the results. And then she actually worked on my mother-in-law, and my mother-in-law is this very sweet lady, but she can be very, just a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious for sure. And she got up on the stage, and I just remember she was totally hunched in. She was, she was just curled up on herself, like she just didn't want to be seen at all to be up on that stage. But she got called, so up she went, and I remember Dr. Louise was asking her questions, and my mother-in-law's responses were very quiet, kind of one-word answers. You could just hear in her voice, she had that shake, like a person who's about to just burst into tears, because they just can't handle, the anxiety that's going on right then. And Louise started to work on her, and she started to release energetic blocks, and kind of like halfway through, my mother-in-law straightened up, and she had, and she looked, relaxed up on the stage. She kind of cleared that major anxiety that was plaguing her. And then by the end, my mother-in-law was cracking jokes up on stage in front of 100 people. And to that date, I had not seen my mother-in-law crack a joke. She would laugh and giggle, but I had not actually seen her tell a joke. And it was the coolest thing to me, and it just blew my mind. And it just opened up this whole world of, this is what else is out there, and to me, that was the reality that I couldn't see. There was this whole other level of healing that was going on. And so I said, I don't care what it costs. I need this for me. And I did get that for me. And actually I healed out of my major depression. I healed out of my chronic genetic depression. And I became a happy person, which was huge. I mean, it just gave me such a life back. So I really set about starting to learn all that I could. And I learned from Louise. I learned from a couple of NLP practitioners. I learned and learned and learned as much as I could, and kept following up on my Chinese medicine as well. It all interweaves really interestingly when you start to pick all these different pieces from different places, which is a little bit what I'm going to talk about at the end of this podcast. But so I healed out of that, and I started learning, and I started using some of these techniques actually in my veterinary medicine. And what I would do is I would go see an animal, and I would do the acupuncture, and I would sort of use that as, talking a little bit later, but as the conduit to heal the physical, but to also open up the energetic. And by doing that, then I was able to start clearing out energetic blockages. And I was able to actually get some really fast and really impressive results. Things like I've had tumors disappear. I have, cured things. I've cured things that nobody else could touch with Western medicine or otherwise. And so it's really just given me this, this bolstering, this boost that, there's something here. And my mission now is really to share it and to spread this healing. So, I'm doing that in a couple of different ways. And I do that through my veterinary medicine. I also work on people just with a coaching aspect of doing, basically emotional releasing. And then, I will reprogram their energetic field in order to, basically set it to vibrate at a proper vibration for health and happiness. But I also, I'm trying to do this. I've got a blog that I've been writing for a few years, and now we're on podcasts to try to just really spread the message, really spread what it is that I have learned and what it is that I keep continuing to learn, of course. So that is me, and that is, the journey so far. All right. And I sort of thought for this first episode, I'd give you a framework of how it is that I see the world, how it is that the framework that I really work in, and how it is that I, really just perceive things and do things, and how I'm sort of piecing all of these different pieces together that I have picked up. I say by accident, but of course nothing really happens by accident. So I think, the starting point for me is always just the physical body. That's kind of what we know. That's what we can see. And we all know we have a physical body. Maybe we've got aches and pains, or maybe maybe we feel great. But yeah, physical body. But then there's the stuff that we can't see. And so Chinese medicine tells us that there's always going to be a yin and a yang, that everything exists on a spectrum. And so the yin is typically considered a very like solid energy. It's sort of a condensed energy. It can be slow, it can be dark. Sometimes they use to describe it. And then we've got the yang energy, which is a very expanded kind of ethereal energy. Can also be, like light, can be active. It's sort of like this big expanding energy, and the yin is this small contracting energy. And the idea is that everything has a little bit of yin and a little bit of yang in it. And there's this yin within yang, within yin, within yang. And, and if we start to think about the concept, of course, basically it means that there's always two aspects to everything. And for sure, some things are going to be more yin and some things are going to be more yang, but nothing will ever be completely yin and nothing will ever be completely yang. There's always going to be this seed of the opposite in there. And so if we think about the physical body, so the physical body, again, is very yin. That's a condensed sort of physical thing. But if we know that there has to be a yang within the yin, then we start to recognize this idea of the energy body, this sort of ethereal component. So we've got the physical that we can see, and then we've got the, I like to picture things in my head. We've sort of got this cloud of energetic vibration happening out around us. And there's some really interesting research that's coming out. And I have a little bit of a love for physics as well, especially quantum physics. And there's this really old experiment called the double slit experiment. And what they would do is they would shoot single particles, and they started with photons and electrons, like actually single particles, and they would shoot them at a barrier that had two slits in it. And so the idea is you're shooting one particle, you've got a wall with two slits, and the particle should either shoot through one or through the other. And then they capture it on a screen, and they watch to see where these particles land. And a really interesting thing happens, because if you're taking something that travels in a straight line and you're putting it through just one or the other, it's coming from the same place, and you put it through one or the other slit, it should just end up as a dot on the capture screen. And maybe there'll be a little bit of variation, because there's always a little bit of variation, but it should just end up as a dot. And what actually happened was they saw a wave pattern show up, which meant that there's kind of a gradient. There were, lots in one place, not very many in another place, lots in one place, not very many in another place. And so a little bit, it was a wave interference pattern, meaning that basically what they concluded from it was that the particles would go through both slits at the same time, and the particles would actually interfere with each other. So one particle goes through two slits, and then it comes out as a wave pattern. And this wave pattern interferes with the other wave pattern. And then these wave patterns create an interesting landing pattern on the capture screen. So one particle somehow shows up as two waves. And this is actually where they get the idea of kind of quantum probability. Because the other really interesting thing about this was that when they actually started observing, well, how are they going through these slits? The particle would only go through one or the other, which is kind of that quantum concept of basically everything exists as a probability until you observe it. And then it will either, it's a probability that it's going to pass through the slit until you actually observe it. And you observe it going through the slit or not through the slit. And that's when you get a concrete. But they're more interested in this quantum sort of nature where this one particle, if you don't observe it, it maintains its probability status. And it comes out as these waves. And again, the waves interfere. There's kind of a probability wave that goes through one and a probability wave that goes through the other. Anyhow, that's kind of a advanced physicsy thing, but kind of the coolest thing is that in the last couple of years, they started doing this with like really big molecules, like organic sized, like protein and enzyme molecules. And what that tells me is that our body is made up of all of these, big molecules. And if our body is made up of all of these molecules, and these molecules have this ability to show up as both a physical particle and as a wave or an energetic probability wave form, all of our body has the ability to do that because it's all of these molecules. And so I think that that's really interesting to say, hey, yeah, there is some proof. It's not quite there yet, but there is some proof to say, yep, we have a physical body and we have this kind of wave energetic probability form. And so so I sort of picture again, physical body, wave energetic body all around it. And with my work with the acupuncture meridians, really what I think is happening is that we have the actual physical, the actual structures. The meridians are kind of in between. They can't be identified. There's not, it's not like a blood vessel or a nerve where there actually is something that you can dissect and look at. Certainly they have found that the acupuncture points have different concentrations of things like mast cells and blood vessels and nerve endings, all in these kind of specialized acupuncture point locations. But there's not a physical structure that follows along the meridian. So it's actually like it's an energetic structure in our physical body, and we can detect it. We can detect it physically because they can actually pass sound waves through the acupuncture meridians, and the sound waves pass through the meridians very quickly and don't pass through other meridians. So it's actually like, it actually is there. They can actually detect it and see it. Or I guess measure it. They can't see it, but they can measure it. So it's kind of this in between where it is physical, but it's not physical. And I think it is actually like a communication between the energetic body and the physical body. And that's how I treat, and that's how I do my acupunctures, with this idea of, basically I'm working on the connection between the energetic body and the physical body. We also have this different concept that I think is a little bit trickier for people to wrap their heads on, where we always think everything starts in the physical body, But I think that's wrong. Things start in the energetic body and work their way in. So things start in the energetic, they pass through the acupuncture meridian system, and they end up in the physical. Why do we know this? We know this because the energetic body can change so much faster. And I really know this because of some of the next level work that I've been doing. There's also, again, if we look into advanced physics, I mean, we can look at there are now there's like string theory, superstring theory that actually looks at this and says, inside of a molecule, inside of an atom, inside of the protons and electrons, as deep as they can get, there doesn't seem to be anything other than what they call strings. There are these probability waves, and the vibration of the probability wave determines what type of structure or what type of atom is going to be created out of those energetic waves at the core of an atom. The frequency that they vibrate at is going to change what type of, or is going to relate to what type of atom they are. And that's a theory, and that's, in the scientific world, that's got a little ways to go. But I think it's super cool that it's all sort of coming together in different ways. Different paths are showing up at the same type of conclusion. So I mentioned the work that I do, and so when I do my energetic releasing with the dogs, or when I do my coaching with people, I'm looking at energy. I'm looking at emotional imbalances. And I really think of it as sort of like there's three layers. So there's the physical body. I'm just writing this. There we go. We've got the physical body, we've got the meridian system, and then we've got the emotional body. And the emotional body, I think, is actually, it's quite big. If you read some of the, especially like the Ayurvedic texts, we've got 12 or more different auras or different levels of our vibrational body up above. And I think that's probably true. I sort of group them into emotional body when I'm describing it, but I think there's several layers, and we'll maybe talk about that in a future episode. There's several more layers, but the emotional to me sort of describes it all, or is a way to kind of short form all of those together. And the idea is that you've got your vibrational field, and if your vibrational field is informing your physical body, that means that a healthy vibration equals a healthy body. But if you have improper vibration, you're going to have an unhealthy physical body. And when we talk about emotions, what I kind of mean is these clumps of negative energy that stick to us, or that get stuck, and they disrupt the normal vibration of the energetic field. And then that goes in to the physical body. And we can compensate for a certain amount, of course. But when we get too many of these sort of clumps, too much interference in the normal vibration, that's when we get sick. And yes, I have used this to reduce even got a nice case of a horse where I was able to get rid of a skin tumor within 5 treatments, just releasing all of this junk, and resetting back to a normal vibration so that the body reset back to health. And when I do this therapy, what I do is I actually look into different parts of the physical body. And if you say, I've got pain in my shoulder, I want to know, is it emotional or is it physical? And there sometimes are some actual physical things. I think if we've got, some improper movement, and we've got secondary issues from that. To me, that's a physical thing, but 90% of the time there's an emotional, or 90% of the time it's emotional, or very often it's at least 90% emotional or mental or spiritual, something kind of along the energetic line as opposed to the physical line. And then what I start doing is I say what's in there, and we can have any number of things stuck in there. Kind of the easiest to think about is, maybe we've all sort of had bad situations we didn't want to deal with, places where, maybe we got angry, but it wasn't appropriate to express that anger at the time, and we sort of said, okay, and we just sort of tucked it away and said, I'm feeling this, but I can't feel this, and I just got to put it away. And you think sometimes that you've released it, but what you've really done is you've shoved it in your energy field, and you've made one of these bad vibrations. And what I do is I go in and I identify it, and I say, hey, remember that time that you were at work and you got really angry, but you couldn't deal with it? Yeah, that left you with a thing. So let's just release it now, and let's get rid of it. And then again, you clear out this energetic blockage, you reset the field, and the pain goes away. So that's kind of how I treat and how I think, and it means very much that I am always on the lookout for trapped emotions. It means that I'm very cognizant of the places where trapped emotions can come from. And when I say emotion, I try to clarify what I mean, and what I often will name them, and I'll name them words like anger or hopeless or unfulfilled. And really, actually, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to hit the specific vibrational frequency. And a lot of people get really wrapped up in the word, and they were like, oh, I don't remember feeling angry, but it doesn't matter. It's actually the energetic vibration, and an emotion. When I say emotion, to me, it's just a word to describe something that we can't understand, or something that, it's maybe an easy word for us to visualize for a concept that is unseen, and we can't really visualize what's happening. So it's not necessarily just emotions, it's experiences, and I think what's cool is they can come from a couple other different places. So if I've got this energetic field bubble around me, and someone else has this energetic field bubble around them, I mean, they're going to brush up against each other from time to time, and we can actually have energies jumping from person to person. We can have energies that come from our parents, or even ancestrally. I've cleared things that are thousands of generations old in my family, and it does actually affect all of the generations, in between me and that trauma that hung out for a long time. There are sometimes what we call entities. They're kind of they're really sticky in there. They're this kind of opportunistic, parasite-y type thing that will just kind of leech onto us. And they don't necessarily come from experience or come from another person, anything like that. They just stick on, and they're really, there's probably a whole episode in entities, but they're really interesting because they come in and they want our, I don't want to sound too like doomsday-ish, but they just want somewhere safe to be. So they want to hang out with us. And some of them are trying to, some of them are maybe a little bit nasty, and they're trying to bring us down to their level. But a lot of them are really just, they're just looking for a safe place to hang out. But they really interfere and really mess with our energetic field. And so they're kind of a big deal. And I spent a lot of time working through them. So yeah, I think definitely there's another episode in that. What else can I say? Yeah, and I think like my whole, again, with the podcast and trying to get the word out there. I mean, my whole goal is to go out and increase the vibration of the planet. We talk about higher vibration, whether it's better, but I think healthier vibration, and I do use the term higher vibration quite a lot. There's actually another really cool physics thing, but basically it says once you get past the faster you go, generally the more entropy, the more wild and unorganized things get. But there's actually this breaking point that's the speed of light, and after you hit past the speed of light, then things actually start to stabilize. And the faster you go past the speed of light, the more predictable and controlled and sort of I'm looking for, it's the opposite of entropy, the more organized things get. So I think like the faster we can get our vibration, the better. And I think that's the like the mathematical proof there, but I probably have some more thinking to do about that too. So yeah, but really, really what I'm trying to do in my own life is raise my vibration, which means that I'm trying to clear out as many negative blocks as I can. I'm trying to get rid of those so that my field can vibrate at its highest level. And what I'm also trying to do is I'm trying to help other people do that, because I believe that we are all connected as a whole. If we go up our sort of aura levels, eventually we get into like the big ones that do connect us to everything, to everyone and everybody else. We have this very deep energetic connection, and that's really what Happy-ology, that's what this podcast is all about, is trying to raise everybody's vibration together, because I think that the higher the group is, the higher we can all go. And it's I think we're on the cusp, and we're just going to start accelerating, and I'm just here kind of trying to do my part. So that is it for our first episode. I think that was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. So thank you so much for hanging out with me here today. And like I said, this is new for me, so I would appreciate very much any comments you have, any feedback you have, anything that you would like me to talk about, anything that you found confusing, anything that you think I could maybe do better or a little bit differently to help you out in your journey. And I will, my hope actually is to really hit this hard and start a habit for myself of doing this daily, although hopefully probably not quite as long as this episode. So yes, I will talk to you tomorrow. Thanks so much, everyone.